Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Generally Speaking. I'm your host, Bill Lawrence. Today is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025. Let's start the ball rolling with Zoran Mamdani. He was a person running in the Democratic primary for New York City mayor, and he won much to the shock of the Democrat establishment because he's definitely not a part of the establishment. He calls himself a Democratic socialist, which means you might want something like Medicare for all. We know we have Medicare for all veterans. If you're a veteran, you get Medicare. We have Medicare for all people over 65. Everybody thinks that's fine. But once you say Medicare for all, well, now we got a big problem here. And the right, the political right, is just going crazy. Their minds are still blowing up over Zoran Mamdani. The fact that their guy Trump and his sidekick um, Musk have just totally ripped up the government entirely. They fired people left and right, frozen funds that were supposed to go wherever they were supposed to go, and now they don't. The fact that this man is putting tariffs everywhere and just messing up the economy left and right. The fact that they're trying to block Medicare and Medicaid, and they'll soon be going after Social Security, no doubt. That is fine. But someone who wants to say make the public transit in New York free, let the poor working schmooze that have to go through the subways and the buses, let them not have to pay their $5 each way just to get to work and come back home. Now that is horrible. Yes, what are they saying? He's going to be doing things like creating ISIS, Al Qaeda terrorist cells waiting to bomb everything. They're just they're just crazy. All right, so that's that. What else we got next? Bernie Sanders and AOC, Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. These are the darlings of the Liberal Party of the progressives, and yet they still have their limitations, and it's particularly with Israel, which is really unsettling because Israel's committing a genocide, is killing people left and right in Gaza, in such a way as it's the most horrible conditions of any evil, bad political organization you could think of. Take. We used to think about ISIS, the horrible ISIS, cutting off people's heads and doing all kinds of horrible things. Israel is right up there, right alongside them. They're being just as bad. They got people in Gaza who are or starving to death. You see pictures of babies that are skin and bones and actually die because they don't have enough food. And people going to the very few food centers that exist, and these food centers are just traps that the Israelis set so that when the citizens go there to try to get some flour, Israeli soldiers are in hiding and they shoot them all. They just recently shot 90 people just trying to get flour. And so what? All right, that's horrible. And at any rate, there was a bill in Congress that Marjorie Taylor Greene sponsored to not provide money for Israel's Iron Dome defense system. And almost everybody in Congress said, "Oh, that's not acceptable. We have to give Israel all the money we can give them," including Alexandria Ocasio Cortez. And she tried to say, listen, that Iron Dome is a defensive thing. I'm just not in favor of people getting killed. I'm not voting for offensive weapons. But, that's like saying when Nazi Germany was killing everybody, say, yeah, but let's, give them bulletproof vests so that they don't get killed. We want to protect them. And she's been a big disappointment there. And then Bernie Sanders, what? He had conversations with Zoran Mamdani, who, by the way, is shunned by most of the Democratic establishment. They just can't handle this left-leaning progressive person in their ranks. It's really horrible, and the right is horrible, but the left's got its problems too. So anyway, Bernie was trying to tell Zoran, listen, kind of tone it down with your statements about Israel. Tone it down. A country that's killing people every day horribly, and Bernie has the nerve to tell Zoran to, you should tone it down. Give me a break. All right, what else we got? We got Trump is asking Texas to redraw the districts, the political districts, to try and get more Republicans, elected to Congress. Because if you draw the districts correctly, you get more of your guys in office. Now, of course, Texas is already doing that full steam ahead. But Trump is saying, "Listen, I know you can squeeze a few more um, politicians in our pockets if you just do that." So, under ideal circumstances, an independent party that would look at the state's makeup would set the districts, the boundaries, so that there's a more or less fair representation, in the end with the voting about how many lefties and how many righties end up, getting opportunity to win. But this gerrymandering, fights that. Now, there are a lot of states that actually try to do it balanced. They do have third parties, but of course, a lot of them don't. And a lot of them fight it left and right. And mostly the Republican states try to fight it. They will fight it to the point where they've been taken to court, and the goes up to the Supreme Court, who says, your districting is wrong. You have to straighten it out. And then they won't. They just won't. And the elections will come, and they'll have gotten what they got, and the courts will say, "Hey, you have to change it." And they go, "Oh, okay, we'll change it." But meanwhile, damage is done. So that's what goes on. And now, at any rate, the Democrats who think amongst themselves, and I agree with them, that they always try to do things the right way, whereas the Republicans don't believe in the right way. The right way is just whatever it takes to get it done, legal or not, and that's what they're going to do. And in this effort with Trump telling Texas, squeeze me a few more politicians. Now, Governor Newsom in California said, "Listen, if you guys are going to do that, maybe we're going to start doing that." And whereas for Texas to do it is a pretty straightforward affair because they have the rules and regulations to just do it, whereas uh, California, a Democratic state, long ago tried to make it a fair and square deal where there's an equal number of Democrats and Republicans on the party of on the body that sets the boundaries. And so this would have to go to the legislature again and asking them to, all right, listen, we've got to fight like the GOP is, and make things bad. But meanwhile, the board that they're going to has Republicans on it, so that would be a little bit difficult. But maybe other blue states don't have that problem. I don't know, but it could make for a very horrible situation. And even someone was suggesting that if Texas and any other red states were to redistrict things, that it could set up situations in which the Republicans could lose districts if there was any kind of a possibility of a fight to go on in these new districts that they created. And in this times that we're in now, with Trump going overly ballistic, with farmers, crying because of they're not being able to sell their crops anymore from the tariffs, with Latinos being all sent back to their countries. There's and how many people are going to be losing their Medicare, their Medicaid? There's a lot of opportunity for a turn in the MAGA world to go against them, and so that could hurt them even when they try to redistrict. But you never know with MAGA. So, anyway, another thing, just listening to the news going along, and I was hearing about how Trump and his organization, the administration, has been defunding organizations that deal with human trafficking. He's taking away their funding. He doesn't want any justice departments that deal with human trafficking to investigate, to try and break that. What a nice guy. What else? I was watching this thing. It was interesting about Japanese swords, and how this one famous sword, it's the most famous one, was made in by accident. when the master was creating the sword, the apprentice accidentally spilled some sand on it, and the master was furious, but he did his best to whatever he could to finish the project, get the sword done. And the end result was a sword that still functioned. It functioned well, but it had a unique um, property that when you would swing it through the air, it would make a humming sound. And depending how you swung it, whether it was fast, slow, whether it was uh, twisted into the wind or not, it would make different sounds. And that swinging this sword, you could actually hone how good you were with swinging the sword based on the sound. And it became very famous. It's a world famous sword, and the master tried to recreate it, but it was one of those flukes where you had to be having just the right amount of sand at just the right time, and otherwise it wasn't happening. So the moral of the story was sometimes the best discoveries happen when everything goes wrong. And if that isn't true, there are a lot of things in this world that have happened that way. Back to political things. The UK and Germany have signed a defense and economic treaty. More results of the United States going haywire and causing turmoil and chaos in the world, and other countries no longer thinking we're the bastions of stability and strength, and people are making new bonds and new arrangements. And there's another instance of it: UK and Germany. On top of that, we got Australia is eyeing talks with China, which right now 25% of the trade that Australia does is with China, but they're looking to strengthen their trade. And this is very interesting, considering the United States has always been trying to pose Australia as another bulwark against Chinese expansion, Chinese power. Australia is right over there, that side of the world. But Australia is now looking to strengthen ties with China. And why? Well, again, Trump and his chaos. All right, what else? I was listening to somebody talking about what they were doing and how they had a mandate, a mandate, a mandate. I like this. These people throw around the term mandate. And what's that mean? Well, that means we got elected, and so we do what we do because the people wanted us to do it. Well, how do you know what the people wanted you to do? It's the one thing I've ever noticed about all these post-election analyses is why did the losers lose? Why did the winners win? And they'll try to say it was because of this, or it was because of that, or it was because of the other thing. Meanwhile, no one has done a survey. No one has asked 1,000 people, why did you vote for Trump? No one. And so nobody knows why the person won. I mean, you might come up with some plausible explanations, but plausible explanations aren't the reason why. And then when you get mandate, which is a part of that whole thing, which says, well, we're doing this because this is what the people wanted. Well, again, nobody said why they voted for him. So you don't know what the mandate is. What else? Okay, so Trump was getting rid of the organizations that deal with trafficking. That's not all. He's also killing the Civil Rights Division. What's civil rights? Harassment of minorities, harassments of genders, voting rights. And so the Trump administration says, let's just get rid of it. But it's part and parcel. They're getting rid of everything. So nothing really surprising there. What else? Trump made a video recently because he's trying to deflect from the Epstein scandal, and he's trying to point fingers back at Obama. And he made a video of Obama sitting in the Oval Office having a discussion with someone, like an interview, and suddenly FBI agents come in with their suits and they grab him out of a chair, wrestle him to a ground, pick him up, drag him away. He's arrested, and Trump sitting in a chair watching, smiling. And number one, I mean, this is just a terrible. This president is just like the most degraded sample of a president we've ever had in history. I mean, I heard him complaining about the Wall Street Journal publishing a story, and he said he's going to sue their asses off. This is how our president, the person who's supposed to be distinguished in some sense, this is how he talks and behaves. I know people who say, "Well, this is the culture we're in now," and to a certain degree, I agree. Cursing, saying foul language is becoming more and more common on TV. In fact, sometimes I wonder at the times when there were beeps going on, it's something that someone said one just 2 seconds ago at some other station, they just come out and say these words. And just talking about saying these words you can say and can't say. It's funny. The N word. Now the N word is the N word. You can't say what the word is. You can't even say the word to say this is the word. And why? Because it's nuclear something or another. Meanwhile, if you are an N, then you can say the N word up and down, back and forth, no problem. Well, because they're an N, so they can say the N. It's just a bunch of BS. Come on, please. If you can say all these other words that like have to do with intercourse, and you can say that plain out. And this used to be that you don't say that. There was George Carlin made a thing about the 7 words you can't say. Well, those 7 words are gone now. You can say them all over the place, but not the N word. Nope, you can't say that. So what else? We got the EU is still supporting Israel's massacre of Palestinians. So, I mean, there's this whole story of what's going on in Palestine with the Gaza. You just keep hearing stories every day because it's a horrendous thing. And the EU is still attacking people that support this organization called Palestinian Action. If they label it a terrorist organization, and if you agree with them, you get arrested. You see this 87-year-old grandma with her sign saying Palestine Action. She's arrested. She's a terrorist. This is the government suppressing free speech just by saying you're a terrorist. So this is a new way around free speech. Say, well, your free speech is terrorist speech, so away you go. What else we got? Israel, again, killing people looking for food. I mentioned that already. 93 people killed. Another one, a news story in Africa. I mentioned this in another episode. Burkina Faso. This is a country. I've heard the name, but you never hear anything about it. There are other big countries in Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, Burkina Faso. You hardly ever hear about it, but they and Bangladesh signed a deal having to do with cotton that Burkina Faso would grow it and sell it to Bangladesh, which would turn it into clothing, and not just cotton, but other deals they would make. And what the whole story is about this is that there are no third imperial powers, sticking their fingers in the business. It's strictly between the two of them. All the financing is between them. And so it's just another instance of the third world, as we call it, the third world, finally coalescing and having the strength to stand up on its own without the Western imperialists mucking it all up. What else? Trump is suing the Wall Street Journal. We've said this before over their claim that there was a journal with an entry that Trump put in there about our little secret and what's that all about. And at any rate, one of the comments about this was Trump is suing them in a status known as pro se. I love this. Everything in our world is Latin. If it's legal, if it's medical, it's Latin. Latin is a dead language, and yet it's all over the place. So pro se, what does that mean? For themselves. Why they can't use the words for themselves? I mean, I've seen this murder case. What happened? He exsanguinated. What's the matter? He bled to death. What? You can't say he bled to death? I saw this other thing about people born with rare conditions, and this one had something called multidactylilia, something like that. It's not multi, but it sounds like that. And what's it mean? It means many toes, many fingers. These are people born with more than 5 fingers and toes, sometimes as many 6, 7, 8, 9 on each hand and toe. Oh, polydactyl something or another. Why do they have to call it polydactyl? Why can't you say they've got many toes syndrome? I guess it just doesn't sound good. They've got to seem like they're the smartest things in the world. You don't know what you're talking about because you don't know poly, whatever it is. Okay, so anyway, what happened? Dairy and Canada. Canada, used to buy our dairy, but they're not buying it anymore. And just like corn, just like wheat, just like soybeans, all these products, meats, that used to flow in and out of the United States aren't flowing anymore. And why? Well, you guess it. It starts with a T, and I'm not going to say the rest of it. What else? Oh, I saw something amazing. The desert. People know the desert, right? Who knew that Brazil had a desert? It's got a desert. It's called the Desert of a Thousand Lakes. What? That doesn't make any sense. Desert of a Thousand Lakes. Well, as it turns out, there's rainy seasons on this desert, at which time lakes form, thousands of lakes. And they're not just lakes, they're like pure clear water, absolutely clear because it's just straight rainwater. And this becomes a tourist place. People go swimming in the desert, in the lakes. You dive off the dunes into the clearest water you could ever swim in, and swim in these lakes. And eventually, the dry season comes, and they dry up and they're gone. But they come back again at the rainy season. A desert with lakes. How interesting. What else? Oh, I was watching a presentation by an organization, an outfit that I usually like, and I guess I still like them. They're called Midas Touch, and they do a lot of good reporting internationally. But every now and then they touch on they sorry, they do a lot of good reporting on national events. What's going on with Trump administration specifically. Every now and then they touch a little bit of touch on the international, and that touch is always on the Ukraine, and it's always of this kind of a statement, which is what I had to comment on, was about the unprovoked aggression against Ukraine that obviously that Russia is involved with, the unprovoked. Now, I made a comment. I wrote a comment. I said, unprovoked. You mean like the way the United States um, performed an unprovoked um, blockade of Cuba when Russia tried to deliver missiles for Cuba onto the Cuban island, when the United States thought, no way we're having missiles, on our doorstep. Yeah, that was unprovoked, right? So what? When now NATO wants to put missiles in Ukraine on Russia's doorstep, which is what this is all about, they call it unprovoked when Russia doesn't want to have any part of that. Right. So this is what gets me with Midas Touch and some other like-minded outfits that report on that. And additionally, while they will say that, they'll never say anything about what's going on in Gaza. You don't say a thing about it. All right. So um, those are my items for today. I always keep trying to make this short, but it always seems to be getting long. I don't know. Well, at any rate, I hope you liked it. I hope you subscribed and leave a comment. Thank you very much and enjoy.